All right, so we're recording. I'm here with Angel Maldonado, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so can you just tell me a little about yourself, your experience, age, anything, general? I know you're in the Marines, but, anything you can elaborate on?
I really grew up in Georgia. Went to high school, decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps, and then went through the whole introduction process. Started off my career, and really now I spent the last 3, 4 years in California working with a helicopter squadron. Now with Mag 39, just kind of doing the officer thing. I'm an intelligence officer by trade, but most of my time has really just been spent going through and growing up learning how to be a Marine, doing the intelligence officer thing, and teaching the Marines how to do the thing. Yeah.
All right, perfect. And what kind of pushed you to join the Marine Corps as opposed to any other corps, or maybe another more traditional route in education or anything like that?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of goes back to high school. It all started off because I wasn't a bad kid or anything. I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was being dumb. And there was this one teacher. He was a Marine. I didn't know that. But at the time, I thought I was better than him. He'd try to bring me under his wing. And I would constantly tell him, like, nah, I don't need that. I'm going to be a soccer star or something like that. And then one day he's like, "Hey, join my class." I finally did, and I realized like the values he had, and it was really somebody I wanted to look up to. Like really, the way he carried himself, the way he treated people. I was like, "That's what I want to be." He ended up being a Marine, so I just was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do that." I tried enlisting, but um, realized through a lot of mentorship and a lot of people just telling me what I could do and how I could really affect people's lives and do something better, that the officer route was best for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. From what it sounds like, you've kind of adopted that role that your teacher took, and trying to be like, I guess, a source, of, like kind of like a guide, into this. What I'm assuming is a very disciplined and rigorous lifestyle compared to the way I would say, like, not the general population, but a lot of people in our kind of generation, is kind of living nowadays in terms of like just being kind of on a certain path and like day in and day out and dealing with, mental health and kind of trying to stay strong, even though like, everything's not so easy at all times. So it
Yeah.
does sound like you're trying to do that, which is good to hear. And was anyone in your family like involved in the military that kind of got you into it, or was this really just this teacher that kind of, I guess, put you on that path to say?
Yeah, I mean, not really. My grandpa, my family's Salvadorian, so during the Salvadorian Civil War, was kind of involved into that. But other than that, when I first told my parents, like, "Hey, this is what I want to do with my life," they looked at me crazy. They're like, "What are you doing? Like, you're supposed to follow the path we all did. Go to college." Well, for my family at least, the kids went off to college and did greater things. But um, really, for me, it was just I wanted to do something that I knew I was gonna be able to help somebody or do something. And like, if I was gonna do that, why not go to the people who need it the most? Like we're talking about Marines. These are the guys who are down doing the hardest thing. The guys who are gonna need the most. Not, I wouldn't say help because Marines don't need that. I would say they need the guys that are willing to do the hard things. And I
Yeah.
want that's who wouldn't want to be the best.
Yeah, I actually think about that all the time. I'm not involved in the military in any way, but I have a really great deal of respect for anyone that does anything hard and anyone that does anything that takes, I would say, a long time to kind of gain some traction. And so let's say like with the military, like, even apart from like the basic training and stuff like that, from what it sounds like, it's always kind of about kind of being on time, keeping things consistent, which is, it's very hard, but also like being adaptable to new things. Like, life hits everyone at different times, and kind of keeping that workflow and discipline consistent. I've always had a pretty big deal of respect for people like that in general. And again, like you said, I wouldn't say it's help as much as like, I mean, everyone needs support. I mean, I feel like I would like to think that that's kind of what you're, as a leader and even as a teammate, you're kind of offering people support. Like everyone needs help. Everyone needs some type of assistance at some time. Have you ever found yourself in a position where, not that you needed flat out help, but that you received some support at a time and it was kind of crucial for you to kind of keep on track?
It's kind of funny you bring it up. I was talking to a friend, and I think it's easy for people to look at the Marine Corps or even the military in general and think of it as like this this structured space. And yes, like discipline, and we have our rules that we follow to get there. But this whole thing is about relationships. Like the military, Marine Corps, and I'm a pretty junior guy in the Marine Corps, so I'm not gonna act like I've done these great things. But like every step of the way, every time I've walked into the room, or one of the higher ranking walk into the room, it's not to tell us, hey, do this, do that. It's, hey guys, here's the problem set. How do we as a team figure out where to go next? Every step of the way, it's how does the team affect this? Not hey, I'm the highest ranking, I'm gonna tell you what to do. And it's like we move forward with these approaches. It's funny because like when people get out, I think you get used to like in the business world where these higher ranking people are like, hey, that was all me. Like I did this, this, and this. But you talk to a retired Marine and he'll be like, hey, my Marines did this. The team accomplished this. It wasn't me. So I would flip the paradigm and say everything we do is about teams here. There's not a single individual. The Marine Corps has been here way longer than any of us will be.
It's kind of about the greater good. It sounds like in terms of
100%.
like, yeah, that's a very I think for a lot of people in general, it's a humbling thing to do something that maybe it's in the team's best interest, but for yourself short term, it doesn't seem like it's your best interest short term. I think it's a very telling characteristic of a person that can put the team's needs ahead of themselves. And I do like I try to have that, but I feel like when you're young, it's really hard to get that specific part down. Especially when you're like in any kind of thing with like instant gratification or whatever it may be. Like sometimes your mind wanders, or sometimes your attention span's cut short. Whatever it is, keeping kind of consistent and doing things for a long-term success is something that I think a lot of guys particularly struggle with. Whether it's a self-esteem issue or anything like that is another topic, but I think that a lot of guys in general are looking for that type of guidance because
Yeah.
do you find that a lot?
And man, I think you hear it all the time. Like when we talk about whether it be in the corporate world, the military, or whatever group you're talking about, it's the leaders who succeed, the teams who succeed, are the people who have the long game in mind. Like it brings to mind Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a leadership coach, and he talks a lot up to like military members and in deployed environments, and he talks about how these people with infinite mindsets, like, hey, my team is going to be here, not just beyond this mission, not just the task, but what's how we're going to sustain this in the long run. Those are the guys who succeed. And it's those short gratification moments, the people who are just focused on like, if I can get this next little hit of dopamine, that's gonna make me the best person in the world. Like those guys burn out. I mean, if you take that to like the business world, that's why you see like a lot of restaurants falter, because they're just, hey, how do I make it till next week? When the small businesses that are just focused on putting in a good product, building relationships with those customers, those are the guys who are taking the long game. And I think the military is just like that. We move forward in our careers very focused on like, yeah, we have the day to day, but like for example, me, I'm moving here in a couple months. Like that's a whole different ballgame. If I'm just focused on the now, there's no way I'd make the future.
Is that exciting? Do you find that part of it exciting, kind of like adapting to different environments and kind of like, for lack of a better term, like you're just kind of on the road. You're kind of chasing, you're kind of like chasing like not excitement, but like you're running around like not in a negative way, but you're running around and living this kind of, I don't want to say solitary, but like you're very focused on the kind of goal, and there's something that is really exciting about that, of like this is what I'm doing, and like day by day, like yes, you have interests, yes, you have friends, whatever it may be, but like at the end of the day, like it's my goal and me for right now, and like I don't know, I find it really exciting at
It's kind of paradoxical. Like I was thinking about this. I was talking about it with some friends, and it's like you get super excited to get to a new spot. It's like when you just graduate high school. You're like, the world is my oyster. I can do all these things. But you're like, when it's time to get down and do it, you're like, I've never done this before. And at least in my end, I look at it like I'm showing up to this brand new place, doing something brand new completely, and now I have Marines looking up to me saying, "Hey, what's up? What's next, sir?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just got here," you know. So it's exciting in the sense that I know I'm going to learn so much, and I'm going to have a bunch of people teaching me how to do the job, but kind of scary at the same time. You know, you're going to a new spot, hitting new obstacles that eventually, if your team's right, will get you through it. So a little bit of both, I would say.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. Do you find that there's preparation on multiple fronts when it comes to your job in terms of like staying mentally sharp, whether it's by reading books or kind of having certain discussions, and then there's also the physical aspect of kind of keeping in shape, and then even emotionally, like you have to be. I'm assuming you can't be the most emotional guy ever if you're in charge of like a bunch of testosterone-filled guys, and which do you find that you kind of have to constantly like keep like a well-oiled machine kind of thing, or do you like how do you
Yeah,
deal with it?
100%. And I think especially in these last few years, last few like generations, the Marine Corps and the military itself has kind of evolved to like say, hey, you're not just a Marine, like, or at least not in just in the moment of work. You're a holistic Marine 24/7. That means like if your family life isn't good, how are you going to be expected to be able to take on the burdens at work? So it kind of goes into the sense of like you're constantly trying to find a way to improve, and at least for me, that's like finding outlets of how do I educate myself outside of just my readings at work. How do I find something that's going to spiritually fill me up so that when I get to a hard spot, like you have something to rely on. I think it's also a lot of times the Marines will look up to you for that sense of guidance. So if I haven't, I mean, I'm 25. When I first joined the Marine Corps, I was 22. So there was 28-year-olds that I was in charge of had way more life experience than me. So the only way for me to catch up is by exposing myself to other people's mistakes, other people's lessons learned. I'll wrap this up with like there's one quote from General Mattis. He's one of the most famous Marines you'll hear about. It's he's lived thousands of lives, all because he's read a couple books. All the lessons learned, he soaked it up, and that's how you move forward. So
No, that's good stuff, man. I love reading. I feel like it really kind of it can not only keep you sharp, but I feel like it can expose you to ideas. And sometimes you're reading something and like you're like, oh shit, that happened to me. like you're like an exact. I'm like, it's almost like when you hear a song that you can relate to, but like, you're reading a book. And I remember I was reading, I think, one of Jordan Peterson's books, and I was like, it was like something about like maybe you're not like a loser, maybe you're just a collection of bad habits. I'm like, damn, like. I'm like that. I'm like, damn, I wish I read this book when I was younger. So I definitely can relate to that. Well, going back to something you said earlier, when you said you have to have, not have to, but when you said it's good to have something kind of to emotionally to rely on, especially when you have the responsibility of kind of young men looking up to you and your teammates looking up to you for guidance. What do you find that in? For me, I'm not super religious. I try to be, kind of have like a base, but in general it's kind of like a mindset of like, I don't know if this is healthy or not, but I usually think like, well, this is God giving me the opportunity to grow as an individual or to learn a lesson or to I mean everyone's made mistakes in their lives, and like so whenever I've had something happen to me, I'm like, what is God trying to show me through this? Like, what am I supposed to learn from this?
yeah, and I think it all starts with like your own purpose, like because if you, and this goes with anything, if you go into something not knowing why you're there, you're never going to fully commit. Like whether that be you just got out of high school and you're trying to start a career and you're not fully into it, like you're not going to commit to that. And I think when it comes to these hard parts of life or challenges and obstacles that people face, that pillar needs to be your why. For me, at least when I hit hard stops, my whole why of joining the Marine Corps was because I want to be there for people. I want to be that pillar for somebody. So setting myself up outside of that, whether that be like talking to my parents, talking to my friends, just letting those emotions out, because we're all human. It's
100%.
it's unrealistic for anybody to think that you could just do it alone. You have to have somebody, and just those connections that let you fill your cup so you can give that back. Like that, and I would say being healthy, man, physically, mentally healthy. Like just going out on a run is sometimes the best thing anybody can do.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree because, like, especially with the first part, um, with the way I speak sometimes and the certain interactions I've had in my life, there's some people that I've run into that have thought like, well, you just like they'll be like, oh, you're not emotional or you're not like whatever it may be, that kind of sayings. And to me, I always thought of it as like, it's not that I'm not emotional or something like that. It's more like I feel like I pick and choose when I let my emotions really sway me. So, I mean, for me, it looks like if I'm talking to my mother about something that's bothering her, I will try to show, I'll show emotion, not that I'll cry or something, but I'll just be like, you know what, that really makes a lot of sense, and I can see where you're coming from, and I'll try to meet her halfway or in those type of situations. But when things get hard, I think that there's certain times where the emotional decision is often the wrong one. The Sometimes you want to do something because you're highly emotional. Usually the biggest red flag in any decision, professional, academic, relationship, like to be like, I'm super emotional about this decision, this is the right one. It's usually not a big red flag. But and there's something else you hit on. I feel like it's a lie if you're kind of like if you're a full-time tough guy, you're a part-time liar. I really think that like
Well, I mean, dude, I'm not. If you met me, like anybody you know that surrounds me would be like, this guy is a goofball. You know, like I'm not. Yes, I can be serious, and there's moments for that. You're 100% right. Especially like I'm not gonna go in front of my Marines and act scared, because then they need confidence, But when I have my moment, like I'm gonna have my moment. I'm gonna be relaxed. There's a time and a place, and it's just not healthy to be a tough guy. It's all fake. If those guys
yeah,
are just walking around 100% like nothing bothers them, that's not true. They're
yeah,
just
that's not true.
hiding it.
Yeah, yeah, and also I think it displays it. I honestly do think it displays another layer of strength that you can calmly describe that things bother you. So let's say like you talk about a hard time in your life. It's not that you can't like it'd be one thing if you can't talk about something. Then I think you're faking it. It's
Yeah.
another layer if you're just crying about things from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But I really admire someone that can be like, you know what, that was a really tough time in my life and it was a hard time to go through, but this is what I learned from it. This is how I overcame it, and eventually things did get better. That to me is like displaying the vulnerability that I think is real. I'm like, all right, like
Yeah.
that, like I can, like you can, it's real. It feels authentic. I don't know if it is or not, but it feels like it.
And it's like another sense of security, Like it's like if I had a brother, like if a brother did that to me, I call like my Marines, for example, if they came up to me and showed that level of vulnerability, it's like security. It's like, hey, I'm honored that I'm the guy you can show that to, because you wouldn't go to some stranger and show that, they wouldn't, you wouldn't trust them. But if people are secure enough with you and say, hey, this person is going to listen to me and not just judge what I'm saying, like they're gonna not only secure in themselves, but in the response you're gonna give them. Like that's another level of. I mean, honestly, you kind of call it love at that point. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
100%.
this person is mature enough, and I trust what they're gonna say, so that I'm gonna show them who I am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think a lot of guys, yearn for like a brotherhood like that. To be honest, I feel like that's why a lot of guys feel comfortable with something like a sports team, and then
Yeah.
when they're adults, something like the military, because it's a bond. I'm assuming that you can't easily find. I mean, if I'm speaking for myself personally, it's like you kind of have to look for a certain type of, I think, person, and whether it's a platonic or a relationship or even family, if you see that someone is kind of like wanting the best for you with their advice or with their life decisions that they're kind of recommending to you, like, and this doesn't mean they have to agree with everyone you say. Like, I have people that I have a ton of respect for that have blatantly told me like, I think this is wrong, and I can still look at them and be like, well, I know I can listen to you because I know, like, even if you're wrong, I can assume you want the best for me, so I'm gonna like take that under advisement. I think it's a very it's another layer of vulnerability and security to be like, all right, well, I
Yeah.
disagree with this person, but I'm still going to hear them out. And for me, it's more of like it is a care thing, but it's also, for me, to me, it's honestly a respect thing. Like if I respect somebody very deeply, I'm like, all right, like that actually kind of got through, and like, like
Yeah.
it kind of hit the head.
And I think it's like there's a line, because it's not. at least in my perspective, it's not that I'm gonna coddle somebody. That's not what friendship. That's not what whatever part of that life. Nobody wants to be treated like a baby. It's just that sense of like, hey, I'm gonna let you have your moment, but I also know you're gonna handle this. It's like when a kid falls down, you don't automatically just pick them up and tell them it's gonna be okay. You let them work through it so that they learn those tools and they know that they can trust you. They know that you're there for them, but they keep moving forward, and eventually they'll do it on their own.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Anyway, moving on. So, do you think that kind of like physical shape you're in really kind of centers you? Because I feel like that to me, I don't know, maybe I take it a little too seriously, but I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders when like more like a routine rather than a certain body fat or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like I feel like when I'm on a routine, when I'm lifting early in the morning, I'm sleeping on time. I'm like, I'm killing it. Like even though like it's a total superficial thing, but I'm like, if you're up at 5:30 running or lifting weights, you're like, I feel good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's like if you were to judge yourself of like how capable you are as a person, capability is just it's just performance on demand. And the only way to get that is by doing these type of things. And like, you kind of get a little swagger with it, Like if you're going to the gym every day and you see yourself like shaping up, of course you're gonna feel better. Of course that's gonna lead into you performing better, whether that be in your like personal life or professional life. So yeah, I think it's a requirement, to be honest, for just high performance people. Like if you want to be able to take yourself to another level, your physical and mental health, they're intertwined at all times.
Yeah, I really think so. I feel like, especially with this kind of, I guess, I don't know how to call it, this trend maybe of like people, I guess, from their late teens to early 20s, of kind of running into mental health issues. I think that it's really important to keep yourself at minimum at a routine. I'm not saying go and be an Olympic like weightlifter. I'm saying like if you need to go for a walk, or you need to like go for a swim or like jump rope, like like even if you feel like absolute, whatever in the morning, like just get it done because you're gonna feel better. Like even if you feel like you can't get out of bed, like because I've been honest, I've met people that have had certain, I would say, issues, and then like that's kind of what I've heard. Like it's hard to get out of bed, it's hard to keep things going. I don't know what to do, all these kind of things, and I'm like, oh my god, like I feel like the answer is like, I hate to be like a meathead about it, but I'm like just the beginning. I'm not saying the only end all be all, but I'm saying the beginning is movement, I think. And everyone's different, obviously, but like in a general sense, I'm like, move your body like a little bit, just to get the gears turning, I think,
It's the sense of accomplishment, It's like if you can accomplish this one thing, if you can earn that sort of grit to just start, whether it be a walk or you're hitting the gym or going on a swim, like that's the hardest part of anything. Admiral McCraven wrote this book. He was a SEAL team commander. He was the one in charge of the killing of Osama bin Laden. He wrote this book, Make Your Bed. It's simply like, hey, start your morning, make your bed. You've already accomplished one thing. That's going to give you the momentum to keep doing this other thing. And working out's the same way, man. If you can wake up and do a push-up or go on a walk, like you've got this one thing going for you. Everything else, if it goes to shit, oh well, you got at least one thing going.
You got the win early in the morning kind of thing.
Exactly.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Speaking of books, what else are you kind of into? Are you into any history books or anything like that? I love history, man. I'll like read I'm really into it.
Man, I've been bouncing around lately. I just finished a couple nonfiction or fiction books. It's the Red Rising series, but I'm jumping back into some nonfiction right now. I'm just reading The Ungentlemanly Ways of Warfare. It's about Churchill's secret special forces that he had firing the Nazis. It's super cool. It's just
I love Churchill, bro. He's like literally my favorite.
What a crazy guy. I mean, you talk about just like unruly, ungentlemanly people that you wouldn't think would be in charge, and here he is.
Just an alcoholic British guy. People look at me like I'm crazy when I start talking about this stuff too, because I'm like, no, but he wrote a bunch of speeches and he escaped this POW camp, and then he did that, and they're like, no, like,
God, it's crazy. I mean, FDR too. Like this guy literally couldn't walk, was in a wheelchair, but would stand up in front of everybody and make it happen, just so he seemed strong. Like the amount of willpower and just foresight with it, man.
Yeah, it's no, it's so crazy. Like some of these stories, I'm pretty sure it was Churchill. It might have been Teddy Roosevelt, but I'm pretty sure it was Churchill that he would like ride a white horse. He's like, because I can. He's like, they're like, but the enemy might see you. He's like, no, but like I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, I admire that so much, and I think that a lot of history, obviously, repeats itself. It's a cliche, but I think when you see specific things that happen in history, and then it's not that you see the exact same thing happening nowadays. It's just like you can kind of, I don't know, see one or two connections. You're like, oh crap, is this happening again?
If you look at least like in the American history, a lot of our life cycle is a repeat. Like we this big push happens. We go to war, then lessons get lost, and then we go into this time of peace, and then something happens. Another tyrant comes to town. It's all cyclical. Like why would we struggle through the same lessons that are already written down? Already have happened.
100%, 100%. I remember when I was first learning about World War I, and I was like, wait, they were all cousins. I was like, that is insane. I'm like, I feel like they barely talked about that in high school. I'm like, why didn't no one mention that? I feel like it's like a big thing to like not mention.
You even go back, like you talk about the Civil War. It was literally brother against brother. Like,
Yeah,
lines drawn in the sand, and they just went at it. Ideology is a powerful thing.
100%. And then like even to take it one step further, and you hear about certain books changing the way history happened. I mean, you hear about the Gulag Archipelago being something very fundamental into the Soviet Union falling. You're like, oh my god, like I can't believe that guy wrote that book. Like if I was in the Gulag, I'm not writing a book, man. I'm gonna be like,
It's crazy how like the power of speech. Like you have Mein Kampf from Hitler. The man
Yes.
started a whole world, and then you have the opposite spectrum. Martin Luther King wrote some of his best speeches in prison in the Birmingham jails.
Yeah.
And then he led the civil rights movement after that. It's the power of words. I think the more experience I learn, the more I realize like your words matter. Their words can change
100%. You see it even like in a very micro way, like when you're around people and they say certain things, even like not even, it doesn't necessarily have to be the context of what they're talking about, but the confidence in which they say it, or the lack of confidence in which they say it, can affect things. Like even if you take it something super like non, I guess, consequential, like let's say you're talking to someone you just met that you're trying to, I guess, impress, let's say professional or romantic, and you say, hi, my name's Jason, nice to meet you, versus you're just like, hey, how you doing, man, or hey, like, I'm this, like, whatever, just making it, it's crazy the difference it'll make. And then when you take that to like a huge scale of like, not to like imitate any leaders or anything, but like you're just super confident and stuff, and you're like, damn, this guy, like, well, I'm pumped now. I'm like, I'm about to go work out again.
Yeah. Talk about charisma, man. I mean, when I first joined, I walked around. I mean, I still do. I walk around with my head down a lot, and it's not that like, it's just how I walk. Like I like to look down and think. And people would look at me and be like, "Man, that guy is pressed. That guy doesn't know. Like he's stressed. He doesn't know what he's doing. Don't trust him." But eventually, I'm like, "Oh, let me fix this, so else people aren't going to trust me." So
100%.
just small mannerisms, the way you handle yourself, the nonverbals go a long way as well. I mean, we talk about words going a long way. The way you carry yourself changes everything as well.
I think also too, what a very telling thing of someone is what they're willing to accept. Whether that's on a personal level, like, you'll see somebody be very, not upset, but kind of like, combative to an idea. Let's say someone's like, well, I hate XYZ about myself, or something like that. And instead of like trying to find a way about it, they're like, well, that's just how I am. Whether it's something they can change or something they can't, whatever it is. Or when they'll accept something from someone else. Let's say you have a boss that's like just pushing the line, like just blatantly being disrespectful to a line that's not authoritative, it's just abuse.
Yeah.
But some people are willing to take those things, some people aren't. And it's crazy, to me at least, when you see the type of people that, I guess, pick out who to kind of single out, who to be mean to, who to kind of like, it's like those people have like a radar. I'm like, I've seen it, like, whether in any context, they're like, oh, he'll put up with X, or she'll put up with Y. So I can, and I'm really, not that I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tough. I'm just like, I feel like it's not a crazy thing. It's like, it's a crazy idea to be like, you know what? I actually won't accept that. I'm okay. I'm good off that, you know?
Yeah, I
People,
mean, for sure.
yeah.
And honestly, it's like it's how insecure are you on both sides? Like, are you because on the other person, the leader, for example, like they're so insecure they need to find that weak link. They need to pull that thread so that they can feel better. Like just in this example, or on the opposite spectrum of that, the follower, like maybe they just feel like they don't know enough and they like they need somebody to build them up or build them up in themselves. I mean, it goes back to like you set your own foundation, you set your own building blocks. So if you haven't built yourself up to that, if you haven't made your bed in the morning, like maybe you're not ready to take that higher responsibility or even just go on that date that you've been looking on. It's all in one, man.
I know, right? It all seems connected. I feel like if you're confident in like a certain demeanor, like you're more in a certain setting, you're more willing to take the risk in another one. It's like it's crazy because it's almost like a positive feedback loop. It's like if you're more confident in this, then you're more confident in that, and then it's like it's the exact worst. Like if you have, I mean, because everyone has bad days. Some days
Yeah.
you just wake up a little late, you're a little tired, procrastinating, like I'm supposed to run
Yeah.
5 miles today, but maybe I'll just do 3.
Everyone has these bumps, man. I mean, it's like it's not perfect. I mean, there's a bunch of videos of Olympic coaches talking to their athletes saying like, "Hey, it's the 20-30 rule." Like 20% of the time, this is gonna be a waste of time. Like you're gonna feel like you're having a bad day. 30% of the time, it's gonna be good. You'll be on your A game as long as it all buffs out at the end. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get your Olympic gold. So it's all about consistency. No matter what it is.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. When you run into someone, let's say, either professionally or like, I guess in like one of your friends or something like that, and you see them kind of, I don't want to say struggling, but let's say they're looking for that kind of guidance. Like, you know what, like, I don't really have like something I'm kind of pursuing very passionately. I don't really believe in myself too much, XYZ, whatever, whatever. And you see it bothering them. What direct advice would you give to them as someone that's kind of in charge of, I guess, young guys in this position?
I would say it's never that there's not something. I don't think I don't think anybody goes around life thinking I don't want to do something. I just want to sit here and rot. It's always something in the background, whether it be the family, financial, or professional lives. There's always something that's holding them back, and usually it's a little bit of fear. It's that little bit of self doubt that you're like, if I take this next step and fail, am I gonna be okay? And I think like every time I've gotten in a situation where one of my guys or even just a friend is just afraid of that step, it just takes a little bit of encouragement, man. Nothing gets built without a village. Like being there, being that one person that just listens and says, "Hey, you know what? I believe in you. I think you're gonna kill it." That might give them that extra push to go out there and do the thing. It usually just takes one person, man.
Yeah, no, that's really solid advice. I feel the exact same way. I think that once you reach a certain age, and again, I'm young. I'm 23. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, I've been through so much. I'm just saying like, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people in their mid 20s I've met someone that in whatever setting that like, you want something for them, but it's almost like they don't want it for themselves. And, the more you grow up, I think the more you realize like sometimes you just can't do anything. But sometimes you can, but there's really like usually the times that you can't do anything is the times you really want to be able to do something.
Yeah, like that person has to want it. You can't want it more than them because then it's them doing it for you, and that's not going to work out. Nobody's going to be happy with that. If that person hasn't reached that point in their life when they're ready for a change, then they have to learn the lesson on their own. Sometimes it's not a happy ending, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's going to take a little bit.
Oh, 100%. I feel like that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And if I'm being completely candid, it might even be something that I am not the best at. Sometimes, like, I'll find myself rationalizing certain things, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, I think as long as you're in your most private of moments, because I think that's when you're the most honest, when it's like you're by yourself. How do you really feel about yourself when you're alone and it's just you and your thoughts? can you look at yourself and be like, okay, like I'm doing my best, or like this is what I think actually, am I being insecure, or am I being afraid of something? As long as you can answer the tough questions and you can accept the consequences. There's things I vehemently disagree with people that I'll still respect their opinion. You know what I mean? Like I'm very
Yeah.
much like, as long as you can accept the consequences of what you think, I don't see any problem. Like I remember one time I was speaking with like someone I knew, and they were like, well, I'm just going to live my life this way. And it was like a very different way of life, I would say.
Yeah.
And, I said, like, I just think that this will lead you to being a little less happy, not because, and I genuinely didn't think that their behavior made them a bad person. I genuinely just thought in the short term, it might feel a little good, but I really think this will hurt you in the long term. And I was very like adamant about it. But at the end of the day, they were an adult. They made their decision, and I was like, look, like 100%, like you do you, and like we're still like coolish, I'll still, I'll see them, dab them up, be cool with them, but like, I don't know, I didn't like. I know people that will like jump on someone, and be like, oh, you need to do this. I'm like, bro, like,
Yeah.
just like let people like, like you're not gonna change their mind by yelling at them. Like,
And then like everybody, I think it's very easy for people to get in their own head and be like, everybody thinks like me. Everybody is my own mindset, and it's everybody's grew up a different way. Everybody found themselves in a different environment, whether it be economic, religious, racial. Like you started at a different spot, and your morals are really just a piece of the people you grew up with. Like you and me, like we grew up in a certain way. I took stuff from my parents, my friends, my family, and that made me who I am now. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means my perspective is this. But like I think really what it is what you were saying before. Like can you in your own lonely moments justify it to yourself, and can you be honest with yourself? Like that's harder than people really think, to admit to yourself like you're wrong and everybody knows it but you. Like that's a tough place to be if you can't have that maturity with yourself.
it is tough. It is tough. I think that a lot of people get there because they don't even want to listen to the criticism. Like, I mean, I'll be again, I'll be completely candid. There was a time in my life where like I was like, I'm 20 and I know everything. No one knows anything but me.
Yeah,
I was like,
never there, man. Everybody.
my mom was like, maybe you're doing this wrong. I'm like, I know about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, and to be honest, I really feel like the biggest periods of growth in my life, at least so far, I'm saying this like I'm 50, but like the biggest periods of my life of growth so far have been, I just view it this way, and I really want to preface this by saying like I am by no means like I don't know, like a non-sinner. I only say that because sometimes I mention God and I feel like it's a very quick thing to be like, oh, you think you're perfect. I'm very far from perfect. I'm very much the sinner, whatever. But when I really run into these things, I'm like, all right, like I did this, like, and I messed up, or something happened to me. Maybe someone wronged you. Maybe you wronged someone, whatever it may be. Okay, now what? And I'm like, all right, well, God needs you to be strong, and God needs you to learn things. And also, he knows when you're like lying, even when you're lying to yourself, so being able to say like, you know what, when I did that, that was an insecurity. When I was mean to that person, it wasn't their fault, it was mine. And like, I think the biggest thing with, even these professional or platonic or romantic relationships is being able to admit what you're wrong, what you did wrong, because then you can take accountability and be like, that's the only thing you can control. You can't control if like your boss is mean, or if your friend goes off the deep end, or if your girlfriend's really mean to you. You can't control those things, but you can control like how you react to it. You can be like, you know what, like I'm gonna go and find a new job, or I'm gonna let my friend do his thing, or maybe I should break up with that guy. Whatever it may be.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude, you're stealing lines from the Stoics. Like, you heard Memento Mori?
Yeah. Remember,
Yeah,
one day you'll die. Yeah.
exactly. And if you don't have that accountability with yourself at the end of the day, how are you going to move forward and end it? And, like, at the end of the day, be happy with yourself. Yeah, it's 100% true, man.
It's crazy how these topics have just like floated around for such a long time. Like, obviously, I'm like the classic like meathead. I read Meditations from Marcus. I read that book. I'm like,
What single guy it has? That's like the Post breakup, straight up to go to meditations.
I was at, you know what's the craziest part is like I was actually in a relationship when I was reading it, and I was reading. I remember I was reading it, and like the girl I was with was like, "What's that book about?" And I was like, "I don't want to sound like a weirdo." Like it's like I was like trying to explain. I'm like trying to explain stoicism, and I'm like, I sound like such a tool right now.
It's like I read books.
Yeah, I was literally just sitting there. I'm like, well, if you really think about things, like we're all gonna. But it's led me to try different things, man. Like, not stoicism in general, but that kind of mindset. So, like, even something for me, like, I started improv this year, and
Oh,
like,
it's
I
so,
actually, dude, I had a show like a week ago, and I was
oh,
really nervous, man. I was really nervous. I was like, God damn, like, I was just a meathead in high school, and I'm like hanging out with a bunch of theater kids. They were really nice people. It was just really different from what I was used to,
yeah.
and yeah, but I had a lot of fun, and I'm like, all right, like maybe like this is something I could do. I've actually, I'm that sounds kind of embarrassing, but I actually was like, all right, I think I'm gonna do an open mic like for stand up, and I started writing some material. I'm like, you know what, like I'm young, no one's gonna see it. Who cares? You know?
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's what life's about. Like, I think it's really dumb for the people who get stuck in their one niche that they're really good at, because it's like there's a whole life out there that once you build, it's like you're collecting little skills, little things to put in your toolbox. I used to be in a band for my church, and we would go around playing music and stuff, and yeah, I would sing, and I wasn't good, but I would get up there and play my little song. But using those skills, like if I didn't have that part of my life, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't be confident enough to go in front of people and speak my mind if I didn't crack my voice in front of a couple random people. Sorry,
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that, and that's why I did it because I was like, this is gonna be uncomfortable. I'm like, this is
yeah,
definitely gonna like. I'm like, but I told myself I was like, 'cause I graduated in December. I'm like, all right, like I need to start not being that boring. It's like, it's like, dude, I was literally
bad
just like,
stories.
dude, I was literally just like, I was like, because I would like talk to people like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I lift weights, I read, and I run, and I work, and I'm waiting for school to like PA school to start, and I'm like, you know what, like, dude, my mom was like, you're boring, and I'm like, God damn, I'm
I need
like,
to get some
damn.
more. Yeah.
I know, cause like she's like obviously I'm like that's the night like obviously your mom's gonna like sugarcoat it, so I'm like I
Yeah.
must really be.
She's not even being nice anymore.
I know. So I was like, all right, I got to start like pushing myself, and I heard improv is good, and I mean I'm sure you've heard of like well not improv directly, but like different ways to improve your communication skills and
Yeah.
how articulate you are, and I really want to get better at that. I feel like it's probably the number two thing I'm trying to get better at is like forming my thoughts and being able to express myself and honestly just being able to communicate better and more efficiently with a wider variety of people. I think I'm okay, but I really want to get like I'm like all right, like this is something I should just hammer away at in my 20s, and by the
And
time
it's a
I'm
lifelong
30.
thing, man. Like that's you're shooting for the stars with that one. I mean,
I know,
good
I know.
stuff.
What about
Yeah.
you? Have you found that the Marines have helped you with that? Like, kind of, I'm sure you have to do a ton of public speaking, right?
In my job, yeah. So I spent a lot of my time in front of a PowerPoint speaking to people, and man, I was not good. Like I would get in front of people, get caught in mouth, and just freeze up for a second. But eventually, after doing it so many times and learning a couple lessons, I've been in front of generals before. I've been in front of people that I can say what I need to say and move on. And I think a lot of it's just like people skills and being able to, like, at the end of the day, you're there for a reason and being able to push that information out. Because when it comes to at least our line of work, no, we're not up there to sell something. When we get up there, it's for a mission, it's for a job, and sometimes for certain things it can be life and death. There's no jokes in this. It's about getting the information out. But then there's other times like, hey, like I was my brother's best man, and I remember 3 years ago, that type of angel would never have been able to get up there in front of people with mics, and then a couple years later, there I am cracking some jokes. Maybe not funny, but at least I got them out there.
No, man, that's
Empathy
impressive.
class.
Honestly, that's pretty impressive. Like, being able to, I guess, disseminate information in front of people that are like obviously like your professional superiors, and then on top of that, being able to make jokes in front of your family.
Yeah.
Dude, don't take that lightly, man. I remember at Thanksgiving, my all my cousins were like, everyone go up and say something they're thankful for, and like I was
Toughest
like,
crowd, man. Toughest crowd too.
I know, bro, I know, and like they're making fun of like your Spanish accent. I'm like, all right, bro, like I'm doing my best here, and like I get that, like obviously like I had a situation with my mom earlier this year or whatever. And like she's okay now, but like she goes up and give this huge heartfelt speech, and my whole family's like crying and stuff like that. And I go up and I'm like, so I really want to get better at that. I'm like, all right, I should probably be able to like speak in front of people I grew up around. So
It's even just being able to like, you have to know what you think to be able to speak. It just makes you form your thoughts. And I think like writing is the hardest part. I used to be a copywriter for a little bit, and man, if Grammarly didn't exist, and now with ChatGPT, my grammar was terrible. It took me forever to learn how to spell tomorrow. So thank God for AI.
dude, you know what's hard for me? Answer. I spell answer wrong every single time. Like no
It's
matter how
gotta be
many.
a ESOL thing, man. Spanish is my first language, so I struggle. I still struggle today. So
Dude, I don't know. Was you were copywriting, so you were kind of like a side hustle kind of thing?
yeah, so when I was in college, I worked for this organization called Draw Change. It's a nonprofit working with like homeless kids, and my job was on the administrative side. I would help the founder do some blogs and stuff, try to raise money for the organization, and then we'd go back and do the separate part of helping doing art therapy with the homeless kids. Um, Very eye opening, very different world than what I thought I was going to be in, but man, learning how to write, and then not only write about what I think, but write in the words of my boss, because at the end of the day, like it would those essays would be attributed to her, was a whole learning experience for me.
That's definitely damn. That's it's really nice, man. Actually, that's really wholesome. That's really wholesome, bro.
It was
I
definitely
was over here like a pure capitalist. I'm like, were you just like making money on the side?
yeah. No, I mean it was college credits, so
Oh, all right. No, but still, all right. Well, all right. That makes me feel better because, like, I worked. I also worked for technic. You know what? I'm technically still an intern for this nonprofit that's like for nutritional people of need in the Bronx, and like, I mean, I kept working after I got the college credit too. Like, I have a meeting next week, but like, it started off as like,
quick letter real quick. You go ahead
yeah.
and plug them in real quick.
No, literally, bro. Literally, I was like, December comes around, and I'm like, so like, this is my teacher's email. If you could give her like evaluation letter, then. But no, it is eye opening because when I was doing that, like, she was telling me some of these people's stories, and I'm like, I didn't know this part. This actually really surprised me. I was talking to my boss, and she was saying how they need translators, but not for Spanish to English. She was like, now it's to the point where they need like certain languages that aren't that common. So like they said, even people like spoke like just Quechua, like from Ecuador.
Really?
I was like, what? I know. I was like, really? I was like, I feel like, not that that's not true, but I'm like, God damn. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know like one person that speaks like kind of the dialect from my country that before we got invaded. Like, I don't know how to call it the indigenous language. Like,
Dude, and that's tough. Like, I can imagine, like, yeah, I have my point in life, and taken my own risks. But like, I think back to people like that who don't speak a lick of English, man, and they're like, I'm leaving Ecuador and going to the States, and I speak this native language that nobody else talks, and they're taking this huge jump. Like, that's insane. And
I
they're
know,
making
right?
it happen, you know?
I know I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, dude, I know a lot of obviously Ecuadorians, but I'm like, I know like one person that speaks a little bit of Quechua. Like, my great grandmother spoke Quechua. That's all. That's like that's
crazy.
So anyway, like, it really opened my eyes. I'm like, how do you like get around? You know what? It's actually crazy. The more risks, you're right, that man. The more risks you take in life, like the more you kind of get exposed to things. I like last year, I moved to Queens. Long story, but anyway, so I was working for like a surgeon, and this surgeon particularly, like he didn't specialize in it, but like it became like workers' comp kind of orthopedic surgeon where he just took care of people that got hurt, and it was insane the way people that didn't speak English were just getting milked for money by lawyers.
Hmm.
Like they
Oh,
would literally be like, the most grotesque one was like this lady, she obviously doesn't speak English, and so we're talking, and she's like, yeah, like they called me the Uber from my apartment to here. The Uber was like $30. Obviously, the lawyer's office took care of it. They charged her like $200 for like a $30 Uber ride, and I'm like,
that's insane.
this lady's working for a fucking cleaning company. Like, I'm not saying like like I'm not a good person or like a freaking like I'm not like Mr. Mother Teresa or anything, but I'm like, all right, I
Yeah.
think I'd draw the line at charging this lady that doesn't speak English
Yeah.
$200.
That's crazy. And it's like, man, like these lawyers make so much money to then
Yeah,
to be pinching pennies from poor lady who's just cleaning
it's not the
houses.
same 200, bro. It's not the same 200. I
Yeah,
mean, my mom cleaned houses. I'm like, that's not the same $200 to you that is to her. I'm just
exactly.
like, I actually lost my cool that day because, and I don't lose my cool a lot,
Yeah.
but like that same lady, like broke her arm basically,
Hmm.
and we got her an appointment that same day that she hurt herself, or like the day after, with X-ray. So as soon as basically the quicker we can get her images, the quicker we can get approval for like, let's say, a surgery to help her. And so the place closes at like 5. Obviously, she doesn't know how to get there. I put the Google directions on her phone. I call the place. This is what pissed me off. I called the place because I'm like, like she doesn't speak that much English, like, but she's coming. They close at 5. It's like 3:45 or something like that. I'm like, she'll get there 4:15. I'm like, yeah, maybe she should get there an hour earlier, but like, just fit her in.
Yeah.
They lied to this lady. They lied to her. She comes back crying her eyes out because she's in pain too. She's like worried, and I think she just like she got overwhelmed. She's like crying to me,
Yeah. Stress.
and like she reminded me of my mom, man, because like she was around my mom's age, so she's crying to me in Spanish. She's like, they told me they were closed. She's kind of mad at me. She was like, you told me they were open till 5, and I'm like, I know they are open till 5. I'm like, I'm sorry, and I call them, and I lost my. I never get that mad, but I was like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, and then my boss was like I'm calm, so she's like, what are you like? My office manager, she was like, why are you so angry? And I tell her, and then she actually had my back on this, and she was like, oh, like if you guys don't like take care of this lady, like we're gonna stop sending people over there, or blah blah blah. And we got her the thing, but it was amazing to me that I think the radiologist or something, the guy that was there, he just wanted to go home early. He was like, fuck this, bro. And I'm like, you're gonna turn away a lady with a broken fucking arm because you want to go home?
Yeah. It's weird because you like I guess everybody goes with this assumption of like people in those positions like healthcare or like military like people who like public service, I guess. Like you expect them to have like, oh, they entered this field to do this. They entered this field with a good heart. But I think the older I get, the more I realize you can't always assume everybody's got a good heart. Everybody's there with the right intentions because that's how people get taken advantage of. And like for that example, it's the people that are most vulnerable are easiest. It goes back to like what we were talking about earlier. Like the insecurity or whether in this case being greed, like taking advantage of other vulnerabilities. That's just it's the life we live in, I guess.
I think you're absolutely right. I feel like if they probably thought that lady didn't have anybody behind her back, and they knew she
Yeah.
wasn't gonna make a scene, so they were like, let me just be like, all right, fuck this. And I was
Easy
just like,
money, yeah, for sure.
yeah, no, that still gets me fired up, man. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, I never want to like come off as like, oh, like making money so bad, and like stuff like I'm gonna be honest, I want to
You
make
wouldn't,
money
man.
and stuff
You
like
wouldn't.
that, but like, I feel like there's a line, like I'm like, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
like
You want to burn the bridges getting up there.
100%. I mean, I feel like money's a funny subject too, in my opinion, because like obviously I just got out of college and I'm basically waiting to go into a bunch of debt, and so like money isn't.
That's terrifying. Just waiting
Money,
to get screwed. Yeah.
the cost of attendance, and I did the math. It's going to be between like 140 on a good, like if I get into this other school versus the school I'm into now, it's probably going to be like 160.
Jeez.
And so I'm like, all right, I guess I'm waiting to go into debt, and like, yeah, it's whatever, like, it is what it is. But anyway, so it's funny because like, I mean, I think it's funny, like. I was at the time I was living in Queens. I was making like 18 an hour, living off a scholarship, like wondering if I should even eat lunch today because I don't have any money, taking the bus to work. It was actually really fun. I found it hilarious because I'm
Sleep
like,
for dinner. Yeah, I had those days, man.
I'm like, dude, this sucks. And I remember I was having a conversation with someone, and they were like, oh, rich people are evil. But at the time, this person was making like 6 figures, like 140 grand, and like living a comfortable life, traveling
Yeah.
everywhere. And I'm like, And I just thought it was funny because I was like, she was like, rich people are evil, and I'm like, you know, to me, you're rich. I was like, I was like, I was like, I was like, today I skipped lunch because I didn't have enough money to like eat. But no, I always, I do want to make money, but I don't know. I think that's an insane.
I mean, it's like, man, like there's a line, like who doesn't want to be comfortable? And I don't like. I want to be rich. I don't blame rich people for being rich. Good on them. They fucking made it there, you know. But it's like at some point, it's it's can you be rich and not screw people over? That's the way to go, you know. People take the easy route and start walking all over people to make it there. That's why I'm like, okay, you might be rich, but nobody respects you. You know, nobody cares about how you got it there. You know,
100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this might be like egotistical, but like in my opinion, like money doesn't make the man. And there's a bunch of people. Well, actually, this isn't even about me. I guess at this point, there's a bunch of people I know that maybe they're not as financially successful as other people, but I respect them a lot more than certain individuals I've met that made a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, like the guy, I remember when I worked at a restaurant, and there was this woman who was working like 6 days a week as a dishwasher, and they got paid the least, but she was taking care of her family, and versus even the same servers in that restaurant were making a lot more money than her. They were just getting hammered on the weekends, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who I respect more, even though I know who makes more. Like,
yeah, it's like when you strip that all away, who are you? Like, take away the money, take away the power. What do you got? You know, would I still help you in your time of need? You know, what happens when that money goes away? Who do you have in your corner? That's what it's all about. That's what real. I mean, I think that's why people say like money doesn't buy happiness. You know, because if you don't have
yeah,
that, you don't have your friends, you don't have your family, people that are going to stand by you when the money's not there, then you're still poor at heart for sure.
100%. And like at the same time, like money can't buy certain things. Money can't buy physicality. Money can't buy confidence. Money can't buy life experience. Like even in a more superficial kind of example, like you see the guy that like has a bunch of money and then like, for lack of a better term, gets cucked out by some chick, and I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're about to lose all your money.
That
I'm like, not the best use of my language, but not my best articulation. But like, I don't know how to explain it. You get taken advantage of by.
was great, man. Got the message loud and clear.
I don't know. I see these things though. I'm like, bro, you're like if you just, I feel like you're just. I don't know. I get too. Maybe I'm online too much. I'm just like, what am I watching here?
Dude, I think it's like I was reading this book. John Boyd, he was this big fighter pilot, but he has this quote of like, you're either gonna be somebody or you're gonna do something, and it's like you either are that person who gets the work done, who people respect because of the capability you bring, the who you are as a person, or you're gonna be somebody who just showboats, who just there for the glamour, the fame, but doesn't actually get anything done. You know, you can't do both. It's nearly impossible, and people who do are super successful. But people, the real world, it's one or the other. And I think when people make that choice is when you find out who they really are.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Is there anyone in particular you kind of look at, whether it's historical, like modern, that you're like, you know what, like that guy like had a really good mindset, or I guess like rough outlook on life that I not aspire to, but kind of like I maybe consciously or unconsciously just draw from time to time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say one person in particular that I'm like chasing after, but I definitely have different aspects of people I'm like, that's what I wanna take from my life. You know, I think one good example, and I read a lot about the presidents. I'm just super familiar with it. So like Abraham Lincoln, like everybody saw him at the time as a super nonchalant, nobody cared, nobody respected, and he goes very unprepared, takes the country at its most vulnerable state. You know, civil war. This guy that's never been in the military, and here he is tactically planning, telling generals, firing generals for not doing their job. Like that's confidence. That's that quiet ability to lead and be trusted when nobody else can be. You know, I think he's a good one. Someone I follow up to. I mean, The easy answer is my dad. You
I
know,
was gonna say that, yeah.
the easy answer is definitely my dad. Just because, I mean, the man raised me. He made me who I am, and I think the quality I most respect about him is just how much he easily loves people, man. Like that guy, people will come up to him, he'll just hug. We're super touchy family. Like never hang up on my dad without telling him I love him, and like that. Like that's some manliness right there. That's real masculinity to be able to show emotion to your son, and I think it's because he grew up not seeing that. Not to say that he grew up in a bad childhood or anything, but he grew up in a rougher time that he was like, I'm gonna show my kids I love them. That I'm like, oh shit, like that's how I want to be. That's the type of person and leader and whatever that I'm gonna grow up to be.
Wow, man, that's really interesting to be honest. I can definitely relate to some aspects of that. For me, I think that there's definitely some people in history. I'm like, damn, that guy had some like courage. I'm like, damn, I wish I need some of that too. You
Yeah, I mean, Instagram always on your face. All these amazing people.
know? Yeah, I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, you know, you'll see a reel, it'll be like Alexander the Great never took a job.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right, I gotta get out of bed. But anyway, no, with your father, you know, that's actually something I don't think that a lot of particular Hispanic men hear a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
You know, and so that's, I mean, that's good to hear. You know what I mean? Like you know, I'm gonna be completely candid. I'm not the most, you said touchy, so I'll say touchy. The most touchy, emotionally feeling guy like that, and I would like to say that it's by choice, but if I'm being completely candid, my father also went through what I would say is a rougher childhood than I did. So I think that I don't want to say it prevented him, but it kind of maybe it didn't click for him that he wanted to do certain things like that. So like I didn't really have that with my father, but what I did get that I really do admire and I try to emulate, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but like him and my older brother are two really big sources of inspiration for me because the amount of dedication that I can see them both put throughout turbulent times is like legitimately like crazy. I'm like I remember particularly for my father, like his brother like died like out of nowhere, and it was a very tough time. You know, he went to my aunt's house, comforted his sister, then flew to Ecuador the next day, took care of his family, like took care of things, like organized things, and gave the eulogy at like, and I'm like, you know what, like that is like, and I he showed emotion obviously at the funeral. It's his brother, but what I liked about it was like he was a source of stability in that turbulent time, not a source of instability. And I'm like, and I always thought about that. And I'm like, that's what I want to be, especially when things happen. I mentioned, you know, my mother earlier, like during that time, I really thought about that a lot. I'm like, are you going to be a source of stability or instability? Whether it's, you know, being there for your mother when she needs to be emotional, answering questions a sibling, a younger sibling, my brother's 10, may have, whatever it may be, driving to doctor's appointment, whatever it is, like, when you can't do anything, do what you can. And, you know, but that's cool to hear that your dad's like that, man. I try more to be, I don't want to say touchy-feely, but, like, I try to be, like, more, definitely open about emotions. Like,
yeah.
I think if someone's important to you, you should not easily, but like, well, I guess easily, it should be easily, but it's not easy to me. You should be able to say like, you know what, like I really appreciate when you do this, this and that for me. It makes me feel like X, Y, and Z. This is how I feel about you. I like to keep most of those things when I say those things to people directly one-on-one. But I mean, the fact that, you know, you can, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't think I've ever told my dad on a phone call, and I can't remember the last time I told him in general, like, oh, I love you.
Well, I mean, and I would say like that example, like you just he obviously did his job though because he you this is how you're thinking, this is how you want to live your life, and yeah, you guys might not have like that just might not be the way you guys do things. Like you guys don't vocalize it, but you know he loves you. Look at the way you're thinking now. You know, like you're thinking about being this source, this pillar of strength for your family and for your future. I would say that's the same thing, man. Just because you don't go around like hugging each other or like hanging on each other in public doesn't mean it's not there. It just means you guys have this different way to communicate, and I think that's how you show true love. You know, you find what's right for you guys, and no matter what it is for anybody else, that's what you guys have. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. I think that, yeah, I think people are, 100%, I think people are different. And in the exact same way that, like, there's people that I've seen, kind of attack actually both ways that we just described communicating. I've seen people been like, actually had people telling me to my face. Actually, I was gonna say this like it was an Instagram comment. I've had people tell me like
Yeah, sneak it in real quick.
the whole non-emotional thing. They're like, oh well, your dad's like that. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's almost like a dig. I'm like, yeah, my dad is like that, but my dad also worked 2 jobs to raise me. And I'm like, I get super defensive. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I've also seen people unjustly, I would say, kind of come at the way like you just described your situation as, and like being like, oh, like, you hear this like stupid shit about like I like about like, oh, like men like don't this, men don't that, and I'm like, bro, like, one, like, I think the measure, there's there's a ton of different metrics.
Yeah.
People are different, and at the same time, like, if you're kind of if you're judging someone for being close to their father, that's like a very clear self-reflection of some insecurities.
Yeah.
I would never look at a father and a son, be close, and be like, those guys are weird.
And it's like, man, like you have so much time to judge this. Like you're so invested in this other relationship that you can't. Like, what are you doing with your life? You know?
Yeah, I'm like, bro, that's like some weird. That's like, that's hate. That's legit. Like people say hater, but that's legitimately hating. For
Yeah. Like man, like time to hit the gym or something.
Yeah, no, 100%. What else? I did want to talk about. Oh, did you? I want to know. And again, obviously, stop me if like I'm whatever. We can cut whatever. But I did want to ask you some things about like, did you ever read like War is a Racket? Did you ever read that book?
I know clip it's general. No, I forgot the name. I've heard some speaks about it. Not,
I think I actually I read it a while ago. I'm not gonna act like
Okay.
I keep it next to my desk stand or anything. But the crux of the thing is kind of like I guess talking about how in history certain groups have benefited from certain events politically, overseas, nationally, whatever it is. And do you think that if there was like more talk of this, it would kind of I don't want to say discourage, but like, do you think that it would kind of not push some people, but kind of like distance some people from the idea of being in the military? Or do you think that it's something that doesn't hold much weight and isn't something you should really think about? And that whole theme of like, I guess thinking of profiting, because I to me I see both sides. I can see how someone can be like, well, if XYZ group is getting vastly enriched by certain events, no matter which side politically you fall on, then why would I do that? But then again, I also see like I do have a lot of respect for people that are like, it's about, like you said, it's about the team, it's about the discipline, it's about this kind of camaraderie you're building with a group of guys that you would, how you guys say it, kind of take a bullet for. And so it to me, like, I'm more curious than anything else of like critical. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if that made sense at all.
Well, I guess let me push a little deeper. You're asking is our current culture and our growth in a society, whether it be as individuals or at the grander scheme of things politically, like one country being better than the other, does that growth justify not joining the military because of what we do in our mission? Is that where you're kind of getting at, or?
I guess I'm more asking, like, do you think if those ideas that were expressed in that book of kind of the military-industrial complex in general, do you think if those were more widely, not pushed, but more widely accessed by people in our generation, let's say 18 to 28, do you think there would be a little bit of disillusionment in joining the military in general?
I would say that in like two things, and again, just my own thoughts. I'm just
100%,
some random
100%.
dude, but I would say when it comes to like the big thing for Marines, at the end of the day, like our job isn't to make the decision of where we go and what we do. That's why we have elections. That's why we have officials and ways for the American institution to voice what we go next. Our job is how do we protect the freedoms and rights that this whole American experiment that we've all pushed and have enjoyed as Americans. And I would say that that genesis of how do we keep our freedoms there and secure most of the time pushes people to join the military. I mean, I haven't served that long, but I've served in different environments, whether it be people who think that our mission isn't right. And there's a bunch of stories of veterans saying going to war and disagreeing with the mission. But when they get to that environment, their whole job there isn't to worry about what's going on back home. It's about how do I get my team home? How do I get our most precious resource, the men and women of America, people whose parents trusted us to take out there to do whatever we're doing. How do we get that person back? And how do we make them a little bit better when we go back? And I think that's why a lot of times you'll find misfits are the ones who join the conventional military. You know, it's the man or the woman who sat alone at the lunch table and was trying to figure out what to do next, or was playing around in their textbook or on their Game Boy at lunch, sitting alone, that joined the military because they see that there's a greater purpose than what we're actually doing. It's not just, hey, the president at the time is doing this, we go now. It's we're there to make sure that this stays so that we have a voice later on. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense 100%. Because, again, like for me, when I talk about these things, I'm respectful when I speak in general. But two, I really think that, yeah, I can read books. Yeah, I can watch a documentary. Yeah, I can read Reddit stuff, whatever people do. Yeah. But I think that there's a lot I can't speak on just because of lack of experience, because I haven't been there. And I think that it's obviously different when you're there with someone next to you that you're, again, like you said, their parents trusted you and stuff like that. I think that it's something that I'm not going to be able to understand because I didn't go through it. So when I come at with these questions, it really is curiosity. So a detailed answer like that is exactly what I kind of am looking for. And mostly I'm curious about this because, again, like the more you look in history, the more I think like you kind of see things in history that I'm like, oh, that's kind of crazy that happened. Yeah. Or you're like, oh, like I'm like Gulf of Tonkin. I'm like, that's kind of like, you know, like you just, and like it's not like I have an opinion. It's not like I'm like, oh, I was alive in the 70s. I have a bone to pick with. Like, but I'm like, oh crap, like I'm like, oh no, like I would be kind of mad if, you know, like
100%, man. And it's not like mistakes don't happen. Like there are plenty of times where that's why we have ways to correct it. There are plenty of times where we mess up, whether it be as a country or as a force, that mistakes happen. And it's all about like, do we have the consciousness in our own institutions and trust that those things are going to be corrected? And when we start doubting that, and we start challenging the viability of our institution and what we're there to do, that's when things get messed up. You know, if you can't trust that the military is there to protect you, then you start thinking that, and it might be true. You know, maybe there is evidence, and that's when you go to the voting booth and get it changed if that's what you think. You know, but our institutions are there, and they've worked. They got us here. You know.
Yeah, no, that's true. Speaking of which, like, do you ever see yourself whenever you choose to transition out of the military to kind of pursue something in the political realm, or you know, to be kind of in these things? Or is that, I mean, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
No, I mean, I worked at the Georgia State Capitol as a crew worker for the Secretary of the Senate, and I think to me that was a big that's a very apolitical position. I was there for all senators, and I saw a lot of things that was like, wow, that's impressive from both sides. Like, at the end of the day, all these people, they joined this to move the country forward. Everybody they might agree on a different route to get there, but we're all there for the same reason. You know, we're Americans trying to make our country better. I don't think that's where my skill set lands. I don't think I'm the right guy to be running for office. But
I just pictured you giving those speeches.
Yeah, maybe not that. I maybe one day As in, I work in some budgeting office. I don't know. That's what my degree is in. I'm an economics degree, so
Oh, dope.
be cool to go back there and crunch some numbers. But we'll see. We'll see where life takes me.
Okay, okay, yeah, no, that's definitely, because like every now and then you're like, well, not you, I'm not saying you in general, but every now and then
Yeah, people.
I'm like, what? I'm like, bro, I'm about to run for president.
I don't think. I think every guy like post high school is like, man, I could do that easy.
Yeah, yeah, and then like, dude, I like again like, um, this is I didn't finish this book, but I started it. I got too bored. I'm not gonna lie. I was reading Obama's book, and I was like, God damn, bro. I was like, it sounds like really hard to do all that stuff, like, and like it's crazy how so many of these guys have the same kind of thoughts. Like Obama, I think was like so disenamored with his study of history. He was like every major kind of revolution gets polluted by a couple of bad actors, whether it's, controversial ideas like, communism or something like that, to like even like basic human rights movements that like it'll start off with a good group of people, and then like, slowly corruption kind of erodes the movement, and then it ends up being, just for lack of a better term, a colossal failure. And he literally was in his book, he was like, I was 22 and like I was depressed and how everything sucked all the time.
Yeah.
And then in my mind not that I'm depressed or anything, but like I don't know, man, sometimes I'll read history, I'm like, it's pretty bad, and then I'm like, oh, it gets worse. I'm like, what the, I'm like,
Yeah.
because at the same time, like, when you start seeing all these things line up at the same time, like, in whether it's National Socialist Party in Germany or the Bolsheviks in, Stalin's, and then right after that the CCP, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like, I'm like, so nothing was not all that great 100 years ago. I'm like, there was so much death.
Yeah. I mean, not just the American history, but like the global arc of history has always been I would say like a cycle of, we get into these clashes of revolution. I would say revolution is a bad word. I would say growth of ideologies, whether it be for good or bad, and each person can make their own decision on what that is. But I think the good part about it is you always see some struggle of will, whether it be a Soviet and a democratic or capitalist views clashing to see where we end up. And in those stories, you find little heroes, little mini subsections of like this one farmer who just decided to make his crop a little cheaper so that somebody can afford some milk or afford their crop. Like those little stories are the good things that we get out of this. So there's just bad. There's those.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's bad. I mean, there's the surgeons or the pharmacists that take advantage of people who can't speak the right language. But there's also the good stories. So it's just about finding the balance.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I mean, yeah, we touched on it earlier. I mean, Solzhenitsyn, like, he didn't have to write that book. I would have just rotted. I would have just rotted in jail, man. I'm not that tough. I'm like, put me in Siberia for 20 years. I'm not coming out with the Gulag Arc.
Man, I guess you had nothing else to do.
But that, yeah. But I think we can wrap it there. But
Okay.
I'll stop recording.